want to talk about today, and it's going to be extremely brief, actually, very, very brief talk, is one of the most important subjects, one of the most important concepts that exists in Sanatana Dharma and in yoga spirituality, and that is prapatti, the idea of self-surrender to the Absolute. You know, this is something that you've heard me speak about before many, many times. It's something that I'm sure people have heard about before. Interestingly, not just in the tradition of Sanatana Dharma, but also in Christianity as well, traditional Christianity, several religions. The idea that the way that we know the Absolute ultimately is by surrendering to the Absolute. Well, I want to talk about this just a little bit more in depth. You know, people have heard me quote this verse before from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 66. Sarva dharmam parityaja ma'amekam sharanam viraja aham tvam sarva pabebhyo mokshayashyami mahashuchaha. People have heard me quote that many, many times. Very famous verse. This is the culmination of the teachings of the entire Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna himself says to Arjuna, abandon all varieties of lesser religiosity and simply surrender unto me. I will deliver you from all negative reactions. Mahashuchaha, do not fear. Do not fear. This is the most powerful verse in the entire Bhagavad Gita, and the reason why is several things, actually. First of all, the idea that, radical idea, the most radical of all ideas, amazing contradistinction, where you have the Absolute, you have God saying, abandon religion. For most people, that would boggle their minds. What does that mean, for God to say, abandon religion? Well, of course, when he uses this sarva dharman, what is he actually saying? Not abandon religion meaning becoming an atheist. Not abandon religion meaning, oh, abandon spirituality. No, abandon man-made religion. Abandon anything that we think will bring us to God, but which in actuality is flawed because it's man-made, or because it is a construct of our own imagination. See, when he says this sarva dharman, abandon all of these basically fake ideas of religion, interestingly, he's talking even more so, not so much about the grand denominations that we tend to think of, you know, Christianity, Islam, this, that. Today especially, what is he speaking about? Even for those individuals who make this bold claim that, oh, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. The truth of the matter is, how many so-called spiritual people construct their own religion of their own making in their own mind? Maybe they won't call it religion, but they still construct something artificially nonetheless in accordance with their subjective opinion, their subjective desire. That is a man-made religion. You see, maybe you don't have a church where you meet as an individual, but you have a religion, a dogma that you're following within your own mind. So even the New Age people, oh, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. Really? Well, for so many of these people, they have created their own fake religion that they sometimes try to live, often not, and even live that. So it's interesting, when, again, Krishna makes this the most radical of all statements in the history of religious literature, where God himself is saying, abandon this type of man-made religion. He's speaking very much to every single one of us as individuals, even if we don't carry a membership card for United Methodist Church or the Catholic Church or this church or that church. He's speaking to us. He's saying, you know, abandon artificiality, even in the name of spirituality. And instead, do the most radical of all things. Go to the very essence, to the very root of what is the meaning of religion and spirituality itself, and what is that essence. It's a very simple message. This is why Jesus died on the cross. This is why the Buddha taught. This is why the rishis came, the yogis came to teach us. All the mystics throughout history came to teach us. They came to teach us this one thing. Stop being selfish, do the opposite. Stop living in ego, do the opposite. Stop making yourself the center of reality, and instead, what? Surrender oneself to that absolute. That is religion in the true sense. That is spirituality in the true sense. That is what it is all about. Spiritual, spiritual. Spiritual, 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 spiritual. Spiritual, spiritual, spiritual. This has become the meaningless mantra of our age. What is truly spiritual? It's that simple yet radical motion of, instead of me, 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 and even in the most subtle of ways, you see, not just the people who are obviously egotistical, but even the subtle ego. Even the, oh, I'm spiritual, but no, it's going to be my way. You see, no more of this. Ego, ego, me, my way alone. And instead, the opposite, your way alone. Your way alone. God's way alone. Even if it doesn't give me quite the emotional comfort right this second that I want. Even if, well, I don't know if I agree with God's opinion about it. See, God doesn't have opinions. God's very essence is truth. Opinion ceases to exist. Opinion is shadow. Subjective opinion is shadow. God is the sun. God is the sun. Before truth, opinion ceases. Truth. Truth is the foundation of every single atom of materiality. That truth, that is God, is the foundation and the sustainer of our very own being. Who we are as an eternal being now, situated presently within this body, and when the body even goes away and we continue. Who we are in our essence as soul, God is the foundation even of that. That is what we surrender to. Not surrender to someone's opinion, not surrender to a cult, not surrender to a religion, not surrender even to our own ego, but surrender to that which is the foundation of all. This is the most natural of motions. This is what it means to embrace reality. This is what it means to embrace Dharma, the natural way. What is more simple, yet what is more radical than this self-surrender to the Absolute? So this is what Krishna is saying. Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva pavebhyo mokshayashyami ma shuchaha. Abandon what? Sarva dharman. Man-made religion, but go a little deeper. What is he really saying? Abandon ego. Because what is the foundation of the artificial? What is the foundation of the not real? What is the foundation of man-made religion, including the little religions that we create in our own little New Age minds? What is the foundation of all of that? It's ego. It's ego. So what is Krishna actually saying? Abandon ego once and for all and simply surrender. Give of yourself, not 90%. Oh, but let me hold a little something back just in case. Not 99%. Oh, but what if I lose myself completely? No. 100% we give ourselves to that divine. In trust, in love, in healthy faith, true faith, understanding. Who am I giving myself to? Who am I giving myself to? Another human being who's going to hurt me like so many other humans have? Another flawed person? Another this, another that? No. Look all around you. Travel this earth and try your best to fill your eyes and to fill your senses with as much as you can take in. God is the foundation and the origin of that. Travel to other universes, what to speak of other stars. God is the foundation and the origin of all that. Think any thought you can think. Read all of the world's literature containing all human thought from the very beginning of time. Anything that is conceptual. God is the foundation and the origin of all that. This is who we surrender to. Someone who doesn't even need our surrender, but who allows us to surrender out of love for us. This is the nature of prapatti. This is the nature of surrender. Now, having said all this, easier said than done, no? Easier said than done. How do I perform this radical motion of instead of me, instead you? How do we do this? How? Because again, many of us here might even agree theoretically, yes, we may even say, that's what I want, yes, I want to know the divine and I want to surrender to the divine. I want to know the divine better than I know myself. But how do we do this? Well, there's this wonderful, beautiful verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is a famous verse, actually. In fact, this is very often recited in Hindu gatherings throughout the world because it's so famous, because it's so beautiful. And it's a prayer. It's a prayer in which we are praying to God that we surrender in everything that we are. So what I want to do, just very briefly, is go through this. And first, I want to read the English to everyone. And then maybe we'll do the Sanskrit. And maybe we'll do it together. So first the English. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 2, verse 36. Narayana. Oh Sriman Narayana. I offer to you whatever I do, according to my nature, using my body, words, mind, senses, intelligence, and purified consciousness. I give all this to you, knowing that it is for your pleasure. Very good. So, Kayena vacha manasendriyeva buddhyatmana va prakrite svabhavat karomi adyat sakalam harasmai narayanaeti samarpayami. Kayena vacha manasendriyeva buddhyatmana va prakrite svabhavat karomi adyat sakalam parasmai narayanaeti samarpayami. One more time. Kayena vacha manasendriyeva buddhyatmana va prakrite svabhavat karomi adyat sakalam parasmai narayanaeti samarpayami. Very nice. Very good. So, the English. First, as is true with many of these verses, God is not merely some abstract philosophical concept. Rather, God is personality. God is very much a personality. If we ourselves are personality, how can God be less? God also is a personality. Thus, God is addressed in a very personal way as Narayana. And you can see that here in the Narayana iti, which is two words, Narayana iti. Okay, so this is the first thing that's of importance, is that with the concept of surrender, if we were to tell you to surrender to something abstract, surrender to freedom, surrender to truth, surrender to, how do you do that? You can't really surrender to an abstract concept. You cannot surrender to the air, something that's just kind of abstract and all around you. Rather, you need to surrender to that which is the divine center of all reality. So in this particular case, the divine is given the name Narayana. As people know, the main mantra that we do is Om Namo Narayanaya. Thus that Narayana. Why? Because this is one of the names of God. And a very beautiful one, meaning very specifically the sustainer of all beings. The sustainer of all beings. You've heard that with this little talk I've spoken about that we want to know the foundation, the sustainer of everything, of all reality, the origin of all reality. Well, this is what this word Narayana means. So this is why here, very specifically, we're told, surrender to that being who is the sustainer of everything. You see, not just Joe, not just Sally, not just this person, that person, or not just an abstract, universal sort of concept. If we were to even say, surrender to God, surrender to the divine, again, even that's too abstract. What does that mean? But no, surrender to that which is the sustainer of all reality. Okay, very specific. Let's go on. I offer to you whatever I do according to my nature. According to my nature. This is also very important in that this little clause is taking account of the fact that we are all unique individuals. And that's always the case. That remains the case. Even upon liberation, we remain unique individuals. We don't lose what makes us unique, that inherent self-nature that we have. So this is why this clause is very important in this prayer. I offer to you whatever I do according to my nature, in accordance with who I am. Okay? And now, this is now, as we go on, painting the portrait of what it means specifically to surrender to the Absolute. How do we do this? Using, first, my body. Using my body. How do we do that? How do we do that? Well, we are in physical bodies, though we are not the body. In the same way that we're not a car, but I assume most people came here in a car, correct? Car is a tool. A car is a tool. We know that we're not the car, but we also know that the car is a tool. How many people do good things, go out of their way to do good with their cars? How many people go out of their way to bring food to the hungry? To bring someone to a hospital or to a doctor when they need to see a doctor, etc., etc. We can use tools in a selfish way, in a neutral way, or we can use tools also in a way to help others. We can use our very body in serving the divine. How? Well, first by doing yoga, and in that way, little by little, transforming ourselves in such a way that we are living more in accordance with Dharma, with natural law. Also, we can use our body in direct seva. Premananda and I, we have something in common, that we spent many years cleaning temples. When I was a young monk, I used my body to serve God. I would do seva, I would do service to serve God. Physical service. I would clean the temple. I would carry boxes of books, boxes of Bhagavad Gitas that I knew would eventually be distributed to so many different people, etc. You can use your own physical body to do volunteer work in order to serve God. Also, when we offer our obeisances, I won't do it now because I'm all hooked up, But for example, people have seen me when I do the puja, and I do that motion where I lie flat on the ground and I'm offering my obeisances to God. This is using our body in surrender to the Absolute. In so many ways we can use our very body itself. Using our words. Can we use our words to serve God? What am I doing right now? Using my words. My words are right now surrendered to the Absolute. Why? I'm not talking about the Huskers. Not that I ever do. I really couldn't care less about the Huskers. But I'm not using my words to talk about, what so-and-so celebrity is doing. Instead, use my words to serve the divine. This is something we can all do in our day-to-day life. Use our words in such a way that our words have meaning. Word is sacred. Speech is sacred. Voice is sacred. This is why it's fascinating how there's even a goddess of voice. In fact, this is where we get the word voice from, Vach. Vach in Sanskrit. Vagdevi. Vagdevi is her name. There is a goddess of speech. And the reason why this is the case is because it's understood that, like with all these tools, just like the car, just like the body, speech also we can use to harm people. We can use it for just neutral things, again, just gossip or whatever, talking about what the latest celebrity is doing, or we can use our speech in order to affect positive change in the world and to help others in the world. We can talk about the divine in such a way that now our very speech itself becomes divine. So that's another way in which we can surrender. Our mind. Our mind. Can we surrender our mind to the Absolute? Can we use our mind in the service of the Absolute? Obviously, because we're using our mind to do all the rest. We're using our mind to use our body. It's the mind giving the body orders to do things. It's my mind right now giving my speech the orders to say what the speech is saying, etc. But also in meditation as well. The mind is the most powerful tool we have. It's an amazing thing. We cannot do anything else without a mind. And yet, of course, as we know, for so many of us, our mind is completely out of our control. The mind is our enemy, not our friend. In the Bhagavad Gita itself, Krishna says this, that the mind can be our very best friend or our very worst enemy. When it when it's not under our control, when it's just constantly chattering and fantasizing and just going on and on, at that point our very mind itself is our enemy, because it's keeping us from doing what we should be doing. So what do? We make the mind our friend. We control the mind. And how do we do this? By meditation. By meditation. And more, again, like with all these tools, use our mind in such a way that the mind itself is surrendered to the Absolute. There's I won't do the Sanskrit, but there's a very, very beautiful poem, medieval poem, written by a sage, where he basically says, he's doing a similar prayer to God, and he says something to the effect of, "My Lord, my mind itself are simply flower petals, and I lay them at your feet." Just beautiful, beautiful thought. This idea that something that to us is so valuable a tool, we so identify with our mind in the same way that we so identify with our body sometimes. In some cases, we so identify with our car sometimes. We identify with these things so much, including mind. And yet, what does it mean to pray to God in such a way that you say, everything that I have, everything that is of value to me, everything that I falsely identify with, but which I use as tools nonetheless, all of these things, whether the body, whether my speech, whether the mind itself, I simply see them as flower petals that I simply lay at your feet in adoration of you. That's surrender. That is the attitude that we are trying to cultivate as much as possible. So mind also we wish to surrender to the Absolute, use in His service. The senses, the senses also we identify with, even though all that the senses are windows. That's all they are. they exist such that we as Atman, as spirit soul, existing within this framework of the body-mind complex, can interact with the external world. That's what the senses are. Eyes, so that we can see where we're going, we don't bump into things. Ears, so that we can hear what's happening around us, and on and on. That's all that the senses exist for. Yet, interestingly, the senses also have this added quality, this very interesting quality to them. They have the ability to give us either pleasure or misery. And as a result, instead of using the senses as those windows onto the outside world, we focus on the pleasure or on the misery instead. So we instead become slaves to our senses, following our senses wherever they take us. Oh, we smell some good donuts that were just baked, and our body starts to hover in that direction toward the donuts, even though we know we don't need the donuts. There's no nutritional value in the donuts, but still, oh, that smells good, and we start to eat the donuts, etc., etc. A million examples that we can use of how the senses themselves also, like mind, like body, like so many things, can either be an enemy toward us, or they can be a friend. They can be used as a tool. So, how do we transcendentalize the senses? How do we surrender the senses to the Absolute? Well, it's interesting. This is one reason why this path, this Vedic spirituality, is itself a very sensory path. It's very interesting. It's very interesting how here also, but if you were to go especially to a larger Hindu temple, the first time I walked into a Hindu temple, I was 14 years old. And this was in New York, in Queens, New York. And this was the first thing that I noticed, was as soon as I walked into a temple, all of my senses were just overwhelmed. I walk into this temple, I smell this beautiful incense. And there were brahmanas chanting in Sanskrit, so I'm listening to this. Oh, what's that beautiful sound? And I look all around me with my eyes, and I see this beauty all around me, just beautiful sculptures and beautiful images all around me. And my senses were just overwhelmed by all of this beauty. And this is the nature of Sanatana Dharma. This is the nature of Vedic spirituality. This is why when you walk into a temple, the first thing that probably hits you is the smell of incense. Sweet, sweet smell of incense. And then you walk in and you just look all around and there's so much to see, etc. The idea is that, again, the senses being neutral, they can sometimes harm us, but they can also be used, like everything else, to elevate us spiritually, to help us to transcend. This is another amazing aspect of Sanatana Dharma, of this path. You can use your body to help you transcend. That's why there's yoga asana. You can use the mind itself, even though the mind is material, the body is material. You can use the mind to help you to transcend. That's why you use the mind in meditation, in visualization, and so many things that we do. You can use words to help us to transcend. That's why we do mantra. Well, senses too. Senses too. Again, we can allow our senses to just kind of drag us everywhere, or we can use our very senses themselves in order to help us to elevate ourselves. As we're sitting here, we are smelling incense that was offered to Krishna, and thus helping us to think of Krishna, etc., etc. All right. Intelligence. Intelligence. Intelligence is a very subtle thing. It's beyond mind. Intelligence and mind are two separate things in yoga psychology. Mind is simply the storehouse of information. It's where the data, where all the impressions are. But it's intelligence that then takes that data and organizes it. Okay? Intelligence also can be transcendentalized. And how? Very generally speaking, there are two broad categories of intelligence. There's material intelligence, which is factually oriented, quantitatively oriented, sometimes even empirically oriented. So to give the most obvious example, an example I've given before. Where is Acharyaji? Acharyaji is sitting on that seat. You've used your intelligence to determine this. Well, is that accurate? Yes, it's accurate. It's accurate. Thus, it is of the nature of knowledge, but it is of the nature of only factual knowledge, meaning that it is not eternal knowledge. It's not knowledge that is necessarily true. It's simply factually true. So, where is Acharyaji? Acharyaji is sitting in that seat. All right. Will Acharyaji be sitting on this seat at 3 o'clock in the morning? Probably not. Hopefully I'll be sleeping. So factually it's true. But is this knowledge of the nature of the eternal? It's not. Now we go to that second form of knowledge. Again, the first one is simply factual knowledge, factual intelligence. But then there is the second form of intelligence, the second form of knowledge, and that is intelligence of the nature of wisdom. Now, when we are dealing on the level of wisdom, we are dealing with knowledge which is eternal. So again, where is Acharyaji? He is sitting on that seat. Okay, that's factually true. What is Acharyaji? Acharyaji is an eternal spark of consciousness. That is eternally true. Now we are dealing with knowledge that is eternal in nature. Now we're dealing with wisdom. This is the higher intelligence that we're speaking of, wisdom, buddhi, wisdom faculty, a wisdom that is inherent to our very essence itself. All right? This too can be used, obviously, in the service of the divine. We have to be very intelligent in order to make progress on the spiritual path. We have to have discernment. We have to have reason. We have to have the ability to think wisely and to acquire wisdom. Again, knowledge that is eternal. And thus use that in the very service of God, thus surrendering our very intelligence itself to that divine. Now again, may my intelligence even itself be seen as simply beautiful flower petals to be laid at the feet of the divine. For myself, as I'm writing my books, writing articles, as I'm giving this speech, what am I doing? I'm using my intelligence in surrender to the divine. Not using my intelligence just to make money, not using my intelligence for selfish things, but in surrender to the divine. And purified consciousness. Atma-nivedana. Atma-nivedana. This is another name for self-surrender. There are several words. You heard me use the word prapatti before. Prapatti as self-surrender, surrendering oneself to the Absolute. Another word that is used for surrender to the Absolute is atma-nivedana. And this word, very specifically, even more so, has the literal translation of giving oneself, surrendering one's atman, one's self, to the divine. Understand this is to understand love. If someone here has never understood love, you won't understand this. When you love someone, if you have a child, if you have just someone you love, what do you want to give them? The best. Best of everything. If you can give them food, what do you give them? Just, something, some generic garbage that you just bought somewhere, or if you can, do you try to give them the best, organic, healthy, nutritious, fresh food that you can, etc., etc. When you love someone, what do you give them? Something third best, second best? You give them the best if you can. And if you can't, still you desire that. You could if you would. That's love. That's love. What does it mean to truly love God? And this is where maybe now we can finally get a truly significant glimpse of what this self-surrender truly means. What is the greatest that we have? Forget our possessions. Our possessions are not going to be with us 10 lifetimes from now. Trust me. Not even one lifetime from now. Forget about the material factors of what we are. Our body is not going to be with us 3 lifetimes from now, even 1 lifetime from now. What is the best that we have? We as individuals. It is who we are itself. What is the best of who we are? It is Atman. It is our very self. Does anything get more central than that? Does anything become any more important than my very own soul itself? What does it mean to truly love God? That we wish to give God our best. Thus, what do? Atma-nivedana. After going through the entire process of self-realization alone, bringing us to the point of liberation, of being an enlightened being. And imagine that we truly have self-realization and all of our illusion is gone. But then, even with that, to not be satisfied and to say that, no, now I know myself perfectly, but more, now I also know you. You who are the source of that self. And so much do I love you that even if just symbolically, I even give that self, that wonderful spark of consciousness that is itself bliss and beauty and goodness and light. If I could, give that as a simple flower petal at your feet in devotion. Atma-nivedana, giving myself unto you and the very best of what I am. What is more surrender than that? What is more trusting than that? What is more love than that? Again, even materially, we often feel that way when we're thinking of someone we love. Again, whether it's a child or someone we're in a relationship with or whatever. We sometimes think to ourselves, oh my Lord, I love this person so much, I would give myself, I would give my life for them. If my child ever needed me, I would give my life. Well, that's just a material relationship. It's to be appreciated, very much. But that child is not God. That child is not our source. That husband, that wife, that whoever is not our source. That best friend is not our source. This is what this self-surrender ultimately means, is that we naturally develop this feeling within us of such intense love toward the divine that nothing exists but the divine. People have asked me about this concept of, well, what is absorption? What does unity in the divine mean? Does it mean that we literally lose ourselves? That this saying that's been repeated so many times. Oh, it's like we're a little drop of water and we just drop into the ocean and we just disappear into the ocean. Is that what this ultimately means? This knowing the divine perfectly, this God consciousness? Yes and no. The best way to understand this, in a way that we can grasp this conceptually at least, is again, think of someone who you have loved in your life so much that you would do anything for that person. And it's almost as if you are that person. You're thinking of that person constantly. They're there in your mind and you're just thinking of them and just constantly thinking without even trying. That's the thing, it just happens naturally. Oh, what can I do? What can I do to make this person happier? What can I do to help this person? What can I do? Just envision this. It's almost as if you have become one with that person. And yet, have you lost yourself? If it is a healthy relationship, on the contrary, you find fulfillment in that. Probably one of the best examples is that of mother, because it's been said in many traditions, who loves more than the mother? Who loves more than the mother? Envision that love of a mother for a child, such that all that's in that mother's mind is that child. Now, has the mother lost herself? Has she merged into that child? Oh, she doesn't have a personality anymore? No. Rather, she has found her fulfillment in that relationship and in that love. Well, this is how we are to be toward God. Interesting, isn't it? We tend to think of God the Father. That's Western concept. It's very interesting. For us, we love God almost as if God is our child. Again, what is God? Is God going to stub his toe? But we worry about that nonetheless. Envision that. Envision that. In our love of God, the impossible happens. That's why I like to point out, in the other room back there, the very first room, if you look on the wall, you see a beautiful image of Mother Yashoda, and she's holding baby Krishna, and Krishna is the avatar. That little baby is God. And yet her relationship of devotion toward God is such that she is always worried about him. Oh, I have to make sure that he's well fed, I have to make sure that he's being taken care of. He doesn't need any of that. But it's that devotion that's of importance. That devotion. This is the nature of divine relationship. This is the nature of bhakti, of devotion. And this is the nature of surrender. This is the nature of love. So, all of these things that we mentioned, body and mind and senses, etc. I give all this to you, knowing, and why? Knowing that it is for your pleasure. That's love. I give of myself to you, and why? Out of duty? Oh, it is my duty to... No. Because I know it's for your pleasure. It's going to make you happy. See, the person who loves out of duty, that's nice, but that's a secondary love. The person who loves out of just love itself, that's true love. Because it gives them pleasure to see the person they love having pleasure and being happy. That's true love. That's selflessness. That's selflessness. So this is the attitude. I give all this. What is all this? I give me. I give myself and everything that I am to you, knowing that it is for your pleasure and your pleasure alone. Nice. This is philosophy, and this is beauty. This is philosophy, and this is love. This is the path that we follow. It's a beautiful path. Absolutely beautiful path. And it fulfills us in every way. And